that we need to have more opportunities where we ask youth what they think of their own communities. So Mercedes and I worked and adapted our first impressions survey that we typically use for adults to target youth in the community. And you'll hear a little bit about that later, but that's rooted in the research with the First Impressions program. And we've also conducted a lot of youth listening sessions around the state. And from that, we've learned that a key part of engaging downtowns is including youth in that process. We went to so many communities there's a bunch of adults sitting around asking the question, what do we need to do to get our youth to stay? How do we get our youth to care? It seems like our youth just want to hang out inside somewhere and text each other. And the problem that we saw over and over is that they were not bringing any youth into those conversations. It was a room full of adults asking other adults what we do. So we started to do programs where we started saying, hey, let's bring them in and ask them, because they'll tell us if they feel like anyone's listening, they'll tell us how to get them to stay. So one thing we're really going to talk a lot about today is this concept called placemaking. And it's a relatively new concept. So I want to share with you a little bit about it. CEDIK received a grant with the Rural Development Department to develop a national placemaking toolkit. So placemaking at its simplest form is just creating communities and places where people want to live and they work and they play. This is that idea of a vibrant community. All of us, no matter what age we are, no matter what your background is, you want somewhere that you want to be. You want a downtown where there's stuff to do. You want a community that you're proud to show off when you have family come and visit. So that's the focus of placemaking. When you hear that concept thrown around, that's what we're talking about. And placemaking can fit in your role as an extension agent, no matter what program area you are, because you're a leader in your own community. You all know just as well as we do that if people want to know something, they ask somebody at the extension office, because that is the source of information. That is where you find out what's going on in the community. So as that leader, and especially as that neutral leader in communities, you're often asked to be involved. I'm sure if you all just drop in the chat, like how many of you have been asked to work with your Main Street program or your tourism department, or maybe, I don't know, my community, we have this festival called Old Fashioned Days. I'm sure you all have one. What's yours, Mercedes? What's yours called?
We have Mountain Memories in Menifee County.
Mountain Memories, there you go. So I know you all probably have something like that. If you've been asked, oh, Big Brownsville Bash, that's a good one. I like the alliteration there. You've all been asked to be involved in those committees. So as an extension agent, how can you think about ways to also speak for the youth or include the youth in that process? It's a shift that you can do, especially those of you that are 4-H, but anyone in the office. The Spring Chicken Festival, oh, that's a good name. That's a great one. And the Chamber Youth Leadership Program. So we have in Corbin, which is really close to me, we're the home of Kentucky Fried Chicken. So just north of that is like the Chicken Festival in London. And there's a Colonel Sanders lookalike contest, all of it. So yes. I think all of us have been involved in those in our communities. So this can fit in your role in extension through those, but also just through your downtowns. I know you all, I know we have a lot of examples working with your Main Street and working with your tourism. So we're going to cover a little bit about our placemaking toolkit before I turn it to Mercedes, who's going to share 3 really tangible, really simple, but effective activities that you could implement within the next 3 months in your community. If you were to go to ruralplacemaking.com, that is our official website for the Rural America Placemaking Toolkit. And this is just a comprehensive toolkit full of a bunch of examples of creative ways you can engage your community. These are all audiences. Some of them are as simple as here's a 20-minute writing activity or a 20-minute decision-making tool that you can use to add on to any community meeting you're doing, up to here's information about a really comprehensive community assessment that you might want to bring into your community that you would work with maybe other partners like your fiscal court or your magistrates or something like that to bring to your community. So the way this site works is if you're still not sure about placemaking, you've heard me say a little bit about it, but you really want more information to feel confident that you could explain it to someone else, there's a Get Started guide in the top right corner. And you click on that and it takes you to a whole question and answer section that just covers What is placemaking? Why should I care? What does it mean, especially in rural communities? And for those of you who are in micro-urban or urban communities, all of these activities are absolutely applicable as well. Even though this says rural America, the reason we did that is because when you research things like this, most of them have taken place in big cities like New York, LA, Chicago, Detroit, Miami, and there wasn't much out there for the rest of us. So we focus this on how do you do this in small communities that are smaller than New York City, because the laws are different, the rules are different, the infrastructure is so different. So as you move through this resource, and we're going to share this with you at the end too, so you'll get information. You're going to get a binder sent to you with all of this stuff, but it talks about how to host creative community conversations, and there's some examples for that. We talk about public spaces and gathering places, because I know all of you probably either have some kind of small park in your community, or you know of some abandoned space that could become a park in your community, either of those. So this is a way to look at ideas, and this has spotlights from all over the country to give you ideas to spark that inspiration for more activities to build on after you implement the 3 that Mercedes is going to tell you about in just a minute. We're not saying that these individual projects, if you do each of these in a row, you're going to magically revitalize your own downtown. But we're saying these projects are opportunities to jumpstart creativity, to get people in your community excited about downtown revitalization, and to give you those small steps to build on to help your community continue to move in the right direction. One other resource we have is the Spark Extension Placemaking Toolkit. This was written from an NEA grant we got a couple years ago. Me and Dr. Jae Young Koo worked together to get a grant to write an extension toolkit that features some of the work that's been done in the community arts program here in Kentucky. Kentucky is the only state that has community arts extension agents in programs in counties. We have 6 counties that have a community arts person, as well as a couple of associates and specialists at the state level who can support our communities from all program areas who are interested in doing creative activities and arts activities. So every extension office, sometime during COVID, got mailed a copy of this. I can't remember exactly which year or when, but I know it happened. And if you can't find it, if you ask around in your office, the cover looks just like this with these light bulbs. If you ask around in your office and no one seems to remember where that wound up or what stack of papers or what bookshelf, send me a message and let me know, because we have extra copies that I'm sure Mercedes and I would both be happy to send out to reduce the amount of books on our bookshelf. So feel free to ask us and we'll get you a copy of that. But it's got 13 activities that range from working in farmers markets to planning festivals downtown. And each of our arts extension communities contributed a chapter to this. So you know it's programs or activities that have been tried in communities already in Kentucky and have worked. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mercedes, and she's going to share with us some of these activities, step-by-step how to do it. Take it away, Mercedes.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Like I said, I am Mercedes Fraser, and I'm a senior extension associate with CEDIK, the Community and Economic Development Initiative of Kentucky. And I feel like I've come in contact with a few of you before. I have led the Youth Engagement Leadership Program at CEDIK for the last couple of years. And we have done a couple of these activities as a part of that, as well as with our partnership with the Winchester Design Studio that I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. But just like Melissa said, I'm going to walk us through 3 activities to engage young people in envisioning a future of your downtown, as well as encouraging them to be there. So I've got a couple of just bullets under each activity. We're going to go through all of them in depth. The first is the Downtown Photo Challenge. Then we'll look at a Youth First Impressions walking tour and a window display workshop. Before I jump into each activity, I would like to encourage you, if you have any questions or comments, please either unmute yourself and ask, or drop them in the chat. And Melissa, do you mind to read any questions from the chat to me, just in case I don't catch them during the presentation? The first one is our Downtown Photo Challenge, or County Photo Challenge, however you want to name it. So this took place at the Winchester Design Studio that I referenced just a minute ago. In 2019, CEDIK partnered with the College of Design at the University of Kentucky to create the Winchester Design Studio, housed at 11 South Main in Winchester, Kentucky. I'm sure quite a few of you are familiar with Winchester or have visited before. This was a unique collaboration to imagine new solutions and possibilities for Winchester. And the main goal was to reintroduce and implement design as a process and experience for everyone, and to have designers located downtown and sort of normalize design thinking and design solutions for community members. With the Winchester Design Studio, we collaborated with Main Street, tourism, economic development. We also had studios embedded in downtown Winchester. There were students from landscape architecture, interiors, and architecture in downtown Winchester, developing these sort of solutions for small communities all across the state. So that's just to set the scene for this activity. Winchester has Sip and Stroll, which is an annual event every summer that encourages people to stay on Main Street in downtown in the afternoon. So there's live music, stores have extended hours. Lots of times businesses partner with local wineries to have a sip while you stroll and shop. And this was going to be the design studio's sort of soft opening to the community. We were inviting people into the studio, talking to them about what we hope to accomplish in the next 3 years, learning what they saw as issues in their community, how they saw potential collaboration and partnership. And we really wanted to find a way to engage youth. That is how the photo challenge was born. So like I said, Sip and Stroll was an event that already had people at Main Street. So what we did was open up our doors and encouraged youth to come in and check in at the studio with me, where they received a worksheet with 10 or 12 sort of vague prompts. And then they went out into the event using their cameras or smartphones to take pictures that correlated to those prompts. They came back to the studio, checked out, sent me their photos, and they were entered into the competition. So each slide is going to have, or each activity is going to have a slide with a couple of my notes about the activity itself. This is sort of my distilled thoughts about the Downtown Photo Challenge. Firstly, I would like to say it was a huge success. I think we had over 25 participants, which I was really excited about. And they weren't all youth. There were some adults who just photography was a passion of theirs, and they were really excited to be able to take pictures of their community. So a couple of thoughts. First, this was a really easy to run activity because it was already paired with another event. Like I said, we had already brought people downtown. I wasn't having to recruit youth or recruit people to be involved. They were already there. I promoted the photo challenge leading up to the event. I wanted to, anyone who was interested in photography and who were already going to be there, I wanted them to know what would be going on in case they were potentially interested. You guys are well aware we had to have photo consent forms. I felt like that was something I learned a lot about through this activity. I felt like the photo challenge was a really accessible format for so many because lots of people have access to smartphones or devices that can take photos. It allowed people to see their community through a different lens. And this was perhaps one of the most exciting parts of this activity for me. So I mentioned that there were these sort of vague prompts that we gave. And those prompts were like something round, parallel lines, being on your feet. I'll go back and show you the pictures. And you can see how some of these photos related to those like vague, broad prompts. And it just really allowed people to see their communities in a different way, a different light, and reframe a lot of the things that they thought were normal or not special about the place that they were. And we used the photos as marketing for downtown Winchester. Tourism was able to use pictures taken by people of Clark County, taken by the people in Winchester to market and promote their community. So it was a really great partnership and win on all levels. So in the binder that we're going to provide you guys after this presentation, you're going to find an instruction sheet from the Downtown Photo Challenge where you can see the actual prompts that we used. I should also note that I incentivized participation with cash prizes. I realize that might not be a reality for everyone, but I do think that this activity could be a really awesome way to sort of spark or increase interest in 4-H photography, especially around the state fair. If you guys have a summer event or spring event leading up to the state fair, this could be a cool way to involve some young people in photography. And this activity is also available in the Spark toolkit. So do I have any questions about this activity before we move on? Awesome. Great. The next thing we're going to talk about is a youth first impressions walking tour. But before that, I want to know, are you guys familiar with first impressions? The program, has your community been involved before? If you could drop in the chat or like give a thumbs up. Great. Okay, perfect. Well, for those who may not be aware, First Impressions is a structured assessment program that enables communities to learn about the first impression their community gives to visitors and what they convey to outsiders. These coordinated volunteers take unannounced day trips and sort of act undercover within your community. They report their observations and they're able to give constructive feedback to communities as a first-time visitor. Melissa has really developed this into a very strong and successful program, and it is a great catalyst for community conversation. We knew that we wanted to incorporate a youth aspect into First Impressions. Something Melissa mentioned earlier that we hear all the time is that young people are not engaged or are not interested in being downtown, or that they don't know and appreciate the history and the culture of their community. As a way to sort of explore this and kind of understand those underlying issues surrounding this, we started leading facilitated youth walking tours. So essentially what we would do is meet with a group of students and ask them to give us a tour of their community. We were these neutral facilitators, and because of our position as that neutral facilitator, we were able to ask questions like, but who really was that? Or how long has that been here? That engaged or kind of sparked curiosity in the students to learn more and tell us more about the history of their community. We got to acknowledge some of the really awesome parts of their community that they may have seen as boring or mundane. More often than not, we found that the young people knew a lot more about their communities than what they were given credit for. And they had a real sense of identity tied to this place that we just weren't able to capture in some of the other activities that were available. So as these sort of neutral outsiders, we were asking these questions and we could see this like sense of identity and community settle out. And all of a sudden they were excited to tell us about these things they may not have been very interested in at the beginning of our tour. So here are my thoughts about this activity. First of all, it's free. You're just walking. It's a really easy thing to do, especially when you've got good weather. You can just take a tour with a group of students. It could be any group that you meet with often. And it's really easy to do. You can develop your path beforehand. You can let it be sort of guided by what the students are interested in. You can incorporate some other topics such as safety, placemaking, and community design. I think a conversation that I've had a number of times is students will say, no one's ever downtown, so it doesn't feel like a safe place for us to be. And when we ask, well, why do you think people aren't downtown? A lot of times accessibility comes up. Our sidewalks might not always be the safest place for strollers or wheelchairs. And it kind of introduces space to have those conversations and to ask what we can do to make our downtowns better and more accessible for everyone within our community. It also allows for visioning on what could be. I would say another really fun aspect of this activity is the students sort of get their creative juices flowing. And when you see a vacant building and you ask, what do you think should go in there? It is so fun to hear what their solutions are. Lots of times they're not just, we want a coffee shop or we want a bakery, they know the services that their community needs. They'll say like a mental health practice, or we need access to more rural health care. The students really understand those needs in their community, and this is a good way to allow them to be able to voice and articulate their ideas around that. It also could encourage entrepreneurship, by being that neutral facilitator who is very excited about all of these fun things in their community. You could help them sort of reframe that old vacant building that's been empty for as long as they have been alive into being the hobby shop that they create later, when they return to their community as a young professional. And I think that this activity really can help establish downtown as a place for young people to be. It just normalizes being in these spaces and helps them to feel safe in a spot that may not have really been designed for them in the first place. This isn't something that I've done in the past, but I also feel like this would be a really great way to allow students to meet with and talk to local business owners and learn more about what it takes to be on Main Street or why the business owner chose to locate their business there. I think that this activity would really touch on 4-H leadership, citizenship, and civic engagement curriculum. And it also encourages youth to consider and understand design concepts and placemaking principles. It creates space for a larger conversation around that. The binder that you all will be provided after this presentation contains a number of activities that go along with this walking tour, including an itinerary activity that allows students to plan a day for a visitor in their community, where they jump from, attraction to local business to restaurant, and it gives them this real sense of place and can get them excited about local businesses. Before I move on, are there any questions or comments about this activity?
Mercedes, I'd like to share a story example of it while you can take a second.
Yes, please.
Get your, get a drink of water or something. We did this in a small community where we asked the kids, do they ever go downtown? And a lot of them said, no, we never go downtown. Downtown, there's a lot of needles, there's a lot of drugs, it's not safe, it's not clean. And we said, well, let's, why don't you just take us on a stroll and let's find out? And as we walked around town, it was amazing to see the transformation in the kids just by us asking them questions like look at the architecture up there. That building's really interesting. Or what is this? It looks like there's a lot of cars going by. Why do people go by so fast? And the kids realized just through that kind of 2 or 3 hour session that we did with them, we then went back to the meeting room and had them write down what they really did see compared with what we wrote down beforehand of what they thought they would see. And what the kids realized, the youth realized, is that they had never actually seen needles downtown. They had just always heard their parents say that about downtown. So we have this multi-generational movement where, people our age or like millennials and Gen X and that kind of bracket feels like why isn't anyone downtown and no one takes care of downtown? But they've also been the ones talking bad about it for so long that we have a whole generation of youth who are completely removed, disconnected. They don't have memories as a child of it being hustling and bustling. And honestly, a lot of millennials I've noticed across the state also don't have those memories. Those memories belong to Gen X and older. So having the youth say, downtown's really cooler than we thought. We didn't see that many needles. There are broken sidewalks and it needs landscaping, but maybe we could do something. Really was a catalyst for them to plan. They planned like an open mic night in an abandoned lot just to get people downtown and to get hype about it. So that's an example of when Mercedes, has gotten to do this, the kinds of outcomes that we've seen from the youth. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It made me think. I know one of the questions I like to ask whenever I lead this is, what is one of the most Instagrammable spots in your community? And I know that may sound silly to us, but it gets the youth so excited because they're excited about social media and being online and their online presence. It's a really great way to meet them at their level and just talk about what they would like to see in their community. I know so many young people are artistic and creative, and they have these really fun ideas about about their identity within their community that can be represented through placemaking activities such as creating a mural or drafting a mural. So thank you so much for sharing that, Melissa. I think it's also really important that we talk about, as we do these activities, we are rewriting the narrative for a lot of young people in our communities about what is downtown and what being downtown is. So thank you so much for sharing that. The last activity we're going to talk about is the window display workshop, and this also took place at the Winchester Design Studio this past summer. So as I mentioned, the design studio is located on Main Street, and it has these two large windows facing into the building. Because of that, it was really important to have these engaging window displays facing the community to let people know what was going on in the studio, what our purpose, our vision, and what we were excited to be able to work with them on in their communities. It was also really important that these were inexpensive, creative, and community-informed window displays. I have a couple of examples up here on the slide. You can see here, we even had an interactive, it was a community collage activity, and we were able to have young people participate in that activity. As I mentioned, it was very community informed. If you guys know, LA is bottled in Winchester, so LA was heavily featured in a lot of our designs. But it was a really fun practice for me and for the studio coordinator. And we got to thinking it would be a really exciting activity and probably very empowering for young people to be able to create a window display that would be shown to their entire community. So the window display workshop was funded by a grant partnership with a local school system, but I think it could be easily recreated in your counties. An important note was the grant that funded this activity was really focused on youth, their connection to their community, and how that impacted mental health. And this was a really exciting activity to do that centered on all of those aspects. So this was a 2-day workshop that youth signed up for. And the first morning, they spent all morning learning about design concepts and principles. And then that afternoon, we toured local businesses and spoke with local business owners, which was very fun to witness because the students were able to ask questions like, why did you start this business here? What brought you to Winchester? What's it like to be on Main Street? And the business owners were able to talk about their window design concepts and how they develop those and how important the window is to selling their products. We at CEDIK, we love this sort of cross-section between youth and small business owners, and we've had some success with other programs involving that idea. Actually, during the pandemic, we led a program called the Regional Youth Help Desk, and it partnered local youth with small business owners in that county as a way to offload online marketing and social media responsibilities from the business owner to youth and increase the youth capacity for online marketing. So the young people took part in a couple of trainings that we made available for them. And then the business owner was able to call and say, hey, I need 5 social media posts about this yoga class I'm going to teach. And the youth, they were able to just turn that around very quickly. It was a very successful program. And actually, one of the business owners told me she would hire the intern that we had given her for those couple weeks. To me, what I learned most from that was the power in delegating tasks to a generation's strengths to empower them to have a place in their community. I think that it's really easy to write off youth interest as a fad or, a trend, but the reality is their generation is different than ours. What they're interested in and what their strengths are going to be different. So it was really exciting to be able to engage young people in that way. So after we worked with the small business owners, I should also note that lots of times small businesses located on Main Street aren't necessarily for youth. Both of the shops that we toured, one was a pottery retail store and the other was for home decor. That's not something young people are shopping for all that often. So some of them had literally never been in those shops before. And it was really impactful for them to be able to talk to the shop owner and be in there and feel like they were allowed to be in there, even if they weren't going to be purchasing anything. So they came back to the studio, and on day 2, we spent the whole day installing the window design that they had created. So something that was really interesting about this particular workshop was we didn't have a product that we were going to sell. So the students really had to identify an aspect of their community identity that they wanted to highlight and share with the rest of the community. You can see we creatively used some materials. There's nothing really expensive about any of the materials we use. We have balloons, streamers, cardboard, butcher paper, and it kind of forced the students to be creative and resourceful and figure out how they wanted to show their idea with the materials that we had. It normalized being downtown and speaking to business owners. It really allowed students to be able to articulate their ideas and practice speaking with adults. This could be a really awesome way to integrate 4-Hers with downtown businesses and connect with Main Street managers, the chamber, etc. It does highlight entrepreneurship. You know, the students got to work with small business owners. They got to be in what would ideally be a retail space. Lots of students spent time thinking or talking about if they were able to leverage their hobbies into a small business, how would they, you know, show that in a window display? Are there any questions about this activity? Perfect. So by including youth in downtown revitalization, we encourage them to be creative, remind them to be asset focused and think about what is currently in their community, what small businesses are already there that are sort of anchors for them as they think about how visitors and how they can interact in their downtown. We instill a sense of community pride and spirit, and we educate young people on the resources available to them. All of this can help them become advocates for their communities. So now I'm going to open it up. Does anyone mind to share an activity that maybe they've done in the past that has had youth downtown, or that could be sort of reformatted to include youth in downtown?
I don't mind sharing something. I'm Christy Porter. I'm in Pike County. I'm a community arts agent. One thing that has brought in an insane amount of youth downtown, especially on like dance nights and anytime that somebody wants to make an Instagram post, is our downtown alley. We have some local artists who have hung some art and things down, different paintings and things down just a dark alley. And what they did was they put some lights up, strung some string lights, and depending on the season, we'll have like snowflakes or hearts or different things hanging down, and like you can't get a car through on dance nights because all the kids have their, you know, their dresses, their tuxes on, and they're taking pictures underneath it. So it's just, and then all the local businesses, our pottery and our coffee shop and stuff, they stay up open a little bit later because they know the kids are going to come back and take pictures and want to hang out.
That is so exciting. Thank you for sharing. I feel like string lights can really do really make a place seem like an actual place. Thank you so much for sharing, Christy. Anybody else?
I just love the idea of having the youth have the voice in doing the whole looking over the town like the secret shopper. You know, we've done that, and we even when we've used that we did with the adults to for youth to let them watch the video, because our report was during COVID, so then we recorded it and posted it to YouTube. So we've let the youth watch that and get their feedback from it, but actually doing the program with them. I really love that idea.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, Melissa. I think that, empowering youth to have a seat at the table and just share their ideas and opinions is so impactful. And we act like young people don't know how to speak to adults, but the reality is they aren't given that opportunity to share their own original ideas all that often outside of a school setting. So it is incredibly, it's a fun opportunity to allow them to speak with adults who are kind of change agents in their communities about their ideas on ways they could change or alter aspects of their downtown or through first impressions. That's a really great comment. Thank you, Melissa. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Bond.
I wanted to talk a little bit because we get this question every time, depending on what program area you are in. How do I integrate this into my existing programming? Or how do I report this? Or especially, I know when you're in the county, you've usually got your calendar booked months out, and it can be intimidating to try to tie this in, or feeling like, you're like, you suddenly have to launch a whole new program. So what we just want to say is really encourage you that if you like these ideas or if you feel energized by them, start small and just try a couple of them, one or two of them, and see how they go instead of feeling like you have to, it may be too much to immediately leave this call and think, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a downtown revitalization committee full of youth, and we're going to transform our town. Now, I absolutely believe you can do that. You, I believe, will pull it off excellently, but that can be a big undertaking. So thinking about when you integrate into your existing programming, what are programs you already work with in your community over the year that you're already going to be downtown, or you have you're having meetings with the people who run your downtown, whether it's tourism or the business owners, your chambers. A lot of them, people in your chamber are business owners in your downtown. So who is a group that you could just kind of pitch this or float these ideas by and try these activities with? And the storefront one thing I love about that is, like Mercedes said, is it does build that relationship between the business owners and youth. I've also seen, one of the prompts I've seen this done with that was amazing is there was a town that had a lot of empty storefronts, and people were talking about, like, no one wants to come downtown because there's not, it feels sad and abandoned and not very vibrant. So they engaged the youth to create a future town where the prompt was, what stores do you think we're going to need 50 or 75 years from now? And the kids did installations there. Like, one of the installations was a robot repair shop. And it just gave this fun, whimsical feeling downtown. And through the process of youth getting into those empty spaces and activating them, they also realized, like, wow, these bricks and windows are really dirty. We should just wash these off, and, like, we should have a cleaning day downtown. And the spark that happened there, think about those groups that you already have, work with them, what community partners can benefit with it, and what are just other general programs that you could integrate these. If you have a club, a 4-H club, and the club leader is just really, really involved or really inspired with this stuff, maybe they can run with some of these ideas. As far as CURS reporting goes, because we also know that's a big one, I'm sure you've all heard that each program area does have a community vitality and leadership CURS indicator. So that's a really great place to put these if you're doing this project or this program and you're not totally sure, you're trying to figure out where it goes. We also have an indicator under the arts category 3031, and it's community design and creative placemaking, which ties directly to that Spark extension toolkit that we've shared that you should have in your office, and some of the rural placemaking activities we have. And as far as if you've been doing this over time and or you want to add this and you're thinking, well, I'd love to add this, but I'm overwhelmed at how I could report this as a success story because I'm also responsible for my programming, reach out to Mercedes or me, because we are all about helping you figure out what that message is, or how to write it, or how to celebrate some of those successes. So we could help you with that if that's a barrier for you to move forward. And I just also want to say that these activities, Mercedes and I are highlighting some of the bigger successes, but we've also seen such a range of some communities. This is the little spark in the catalyst that gets everyone engaged, and there's big successes from it. And in other communities, it may be that the outcome is just that the youth and the adults are starting to listen to each other. And maybe there's barriers. The youth want to play in a big festival, but there's too many barriers. But don't feel defeated by that, because the end goal, it's not the this is not product driven, it's really process driven, and keeping that conversation open to keep engaged youth engaged with downtown leaders. That's the real core here. And one of the most memorable examples I've seen was we had youth talking to one of their mayors, and we had a wide range of ages in there. And this mayor is more like, oh, kids these days, they just don't come downtown. And he turned to one of the kids and was like, I mean, what do I got to do? What do I got to put in for you to go downtown? And there were several maps of downtown on the wall for people to interact with in the conversation. And so the question the leaders asked was, where do you take someone on a date? And where do you take someone when they come in from out of town? And where do you spend your free time? So that was the original prompt, but then based on that conversation, they shifted it a little and then asked all the adults in the room, okay, when you were 18 or when you were 15 or when you were 11, where did you go and what did you do? Put a star or a sticker on the map. And what the whole room realized is all of the hangout places that the adults in the room had growing up aren't there anymore. The city pool is gone. The game room is gone. The soda shop is gone. So it's not that youth don't want to be active and out doing stuff. They don't want to be bored. It's that all of the places are gone where they can have those same opportunities. So even just the conversation process of sometimes leading the leaders and getting the adults to realize that the youth can fix everything if we just turn them loose. Sometimes we need to be the ones that get out of the way.
I love that, Melissa. I was just thinking while you were mentioning that, I remember whenever I was growing up, it was very popular to hang out in a parking lot. You know what I mean? On
Yes.
a Friday evening, if it was nice outside, everyone would park and hang out in this parking lot. And my parents could not wrap their heads around why we wanted to hang out in the parking lot. And the answer was, we didn't want to hang out in the parking lot. We were looking for a space to be together and to be safe. That's what we were looking for. And so, kind of reframing a lot of those, if you see youth hanging out in these areas and you're confused and as to why, look at what they're actually saying to you, by being there and by being in those spaces. I also think it's important to note, and while we encourage creativity at all levels, you do not need to have art students necessarily participate in any of these activities. We are really trying to reframe design as something that is accessible to everyone. And trust me, we have a number of designers on our team, and they are not all artists, I would say. Does that feel fair, Melissa?
That's absolutely fair, yes.
You don't have to be able to draw or paint to understand these design principles and concepts and see ways to apply them. So next, I'm just going to show you guys a couple of resource slides. We also want to show you how to navigate through the rural placemaking toolkit. So in the binder that you'll receive after this program, there's going to be this list of activities. And then I'm going to stop sharing and reshare on the website. While I move there, does anyone have any questions or comments? I'm reading.
So I want to know where do the youth hang out in your communities currently? Do you have the parking lot situation? Where are they?
Well, let's see here. I know, one of you two very well, so I know what she's talking about. But yeah, that's still a lot of it still going on, hanging out in certain spots, and small county, small area, not a whole lot going on, but they'll find somewhere. But the parking lot deal is, you'd be surprised, that's still the case, and where to hang out or find somewhere. And that's just, if we're going to think on the negative side, they'll hang out somewhere else. So I'd rather have them hang out in a place that they feel proud of and it's been monitored and taken care of, and things like that. Myself, that's me speaking. But I do want to say this. Thank you too for saying this, because actually I'm working on a couple things in my county, 2 different towns. One, I'm working with Alice. Y'all know Alice with the Shelter Design, doing some stuff, and the other one is Salt Lake area, smaller little area, and they're doing a lot of revitalization, and so we're gonna be starting some community clubs, and a lot of things that you're talking about, we can align with that to get some things going in that area. Because over the years, there've been a lot down. Now they're working really hard to bring some stuff back into the area.
For sure. Well, thank you for sharing that. Terrence. I was reading through a couple of people's comments about where students are hanging out, and it seems like the parking lot phenomenon is everywhere. My suggestion is if you develop something, you should just call it the parking lot. You know what I mean? That'll help really, remarket it and get everyone there. They'll know what you're going for. I'm seeing Melissa's questions about, are those questions like that we're facilitating the conversation available in the binder? I don't know that those are listed in the binder, but Melissa, I can email you with some ways to facilitate that conversation in your community. That's a really great question. We should develop that.
Yeah, we have the kind of cheat sheet. So we could probably, Mercedes and I can add that in maybe before we send out to everybody, because it's really simple prompts to just get the conversation flowing.
Yes, for sure. Thank you for bringing that up, Melissa. So I'm going to share my screen to show you all how to navigate the rural, the toolkit. Melissa, you navigate me.
Yes, absolutely. So also I want to tell you all right now, we are not able to release this publicly yet because rural development, we have submitted to them the date for our last year we did a fully online 2-day conference on placemaking where we have presenters from all over the country sharing stuff just like this that has worked in their small towns. We're waiting on the federal government to give us permission to put it out publicly, but I'm telling you all, as long as I know you won't post it out in the world, but please hold May 23rd because we will have a full day online conference, and that's where we'll be showcasing this stuff with a bunch of new ideas for the next year on downtown revitalization. There'll be more stuff added to this toolkit, so hold that date. It will be put into KERS as well, so that'll be an opportunity. If you already have something booked that day, we record all the sessions and put them on our CEDIK YouTube channel, so you'll be able to watch them in that way. So on the website, you see the Get Started guide in the top right. And we made this website very simple to load on purpose because we know a lot of our communities are still using satellite internet. It doesn't need to be tech heavy because then you can't load it. If I can't load it at my house and on my farm with satellite internet, then it's too complicated. So we can see here, we have the toolkit. We talk about what placemaking is. It was really, really important to us that this is very conversational. You all know as well as I do that sometimes in the university, we are a research institution and we really pride ourselves on all of the academic journals that we can put out there in the world, but that's also not accessible to a lot of our communities. So we wanted to make sure you could show this to any of the leaders in your town, and you can see there's a bunch of different types of placemaking. There's different definitions. It covers this stuff and covers what we are using to define rural, which we go with 50,000 or less, really, which is a lot of counties or cities in Kentucky, really. So it's scalable. And if you live in a county where maybe your county population is a lot bigger, these things are really effective too in just a neighborhood. Like we've had conversations before about doing something in just the Chevy Chase area in downtown in Lexington, because that's a smaller neighborhood as a snapshot. So you can also take a survey, which is it's only like 20 or 30 questions. That's just getting you thinking of things in your community. And it kind of shares with you based on your results, like here's an activity that you could hop to that might springboard for your community. That assessment is also really good to take just to help you see the kind of categories that are really considered in downtown development and placemaking. It ranges from the types of people, like how many people can you name that are on your city council or your community leadership? You know, how many people in your town do you think actually know who all the city council people are? And can they name them, or do they feel like they know them well enough to say, you know, I'd like to be more involved in this and I want that opportunity? Or are you fighting what a lot of our towns are fighting, which is just community apathy and people feeling like their voice doesn't matter, they aren't heard. So this is to help you kind of move through those ideas. Otherwise, you just hop over to our 4 main sections on the website, and there are a lot of examples from Kentucky on here because we made the toolkit and it was based on our research, but also the great thing about it is over the past year, a lot of communities have been submitting. We have an area where you can submit an example. And if you've done something in your town that you think is a great example that other towns could learn from, you can submit it too to be featured on the website. So hop to Creative Community Conversations just as an example. So for example, we've got spotlights at the top, and these are just really success stories of what another community has done. Sometimes these require a lot more community partners or resources than you might have in the beginning. And sometimes they're just springboard ideas. And then if you scroll down a little more, Mercedes, let's pick maybe where I'm from. Here's a couple of examples where if you click on the bubble, it'll take you to the activity. And every section looks like this. It tells you the time frame it's going to take to do the project, how much it's going to cost, ideas of it in a summary, so that you can easily just copy and paste this into, if you're trying to promote doing this activity in your community, you can steal from this page. And then you click on what's called the how-to guide in each of the sections. And it's going to take you directly to that website or that resource with the poem and with the activities. And I'll also say, if any of you are interested in doing this Where I'm From one specifically, we have an internal document through Community Arts that I would love to share with you that has George Ellis' poem and a writing template and things like that, that as long as we're not using it monetarily and you're using it for education purposes, we can share with you to use that. It's been a great conversation starter. And Mercedes, if you go back, then let's maybe look at public spaces and gathering places up here. So this section really centers on what are some cool spaces and cool ways that people have activated cool spaces. This is just, the more you can learn about ideas and opportunities, the more you'll feel like you can move forward. So for example, we've got the community mural toolkit in the center there. That's a really cool resource that was created by Iowa State University Extension that is really almost like a plan of work process, but for community murals. If you have a group that's wanting to do a mural in your community, I've been involved in enough murals to know that is the quickest way to get in the weeds and get a whole room of people who have really strong opinions about the exact colors. Or, I mean, in Eastern Kentucky, I can't tell you how many Daniel Boone murals we have, and that everybody feels like they need another one. So it's kind of a way to walk you through. Now, this community assessment and the design sections and the public spaces, these are more comprehensive things. So if you're on a group or a downtown committee, this is more like a toolkit that you could use over several months. So just play around on the website, go shopping and see what you see. It's stuff that ranges from 20 minutes up to a year to 3-year planning. And if you ever have any questions about it, our department created it. So hopefully we can answer your questions if you reach out to us.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to try and click into the binder real quick. Can you guys see
Yes.
my screen? Okay, so Melissa's comment got me thinking, this is the binder that will be emailed to you. And so it will show you, like, this was the Downtown Winchester Photo Challenge worksheet, but I wanted to click down to some of the, here are the first impressions, the youth first impressions worksheets we've developed, and they can help sort of spark a conversation. But I also wanted to show some of these lesson plans that were developed through the Winchester Design Studio. So here's a community collage lesson plan, and it's sort of formatted similarly to what Melissa was talking about. It will show you how much time it will take, how to lead the discussions, etc. And we've got quite a few of those worksheets as well. I just wanted to show you guys how to best utilize the binder. So I'm going to stop sharing. Yes, and I just wanted to make sure Melissa grabbed it. Just drop your name in the chat one more time so we can confirm your attendance. But that's all we have to share today. If you guys have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, if you want to stay on, I know some of you may have a 12 o'clock,
Yep.
but if you all want to stay on to ask us questions, Mercedes and I are here. Also, Mercedes is going to send out a really, really quick evaluation of this. Like, it's very short. What is it, like 4 or 5 questions,
Yes,
right?
easy peasy.
We would love if you would please fill it out. It should be very fast, just so that we know what was helpful and what else we could do in the future to support your work in this area.
All right. Thank you all so much for making time to be here today.
Yes, we really appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a great day.